At Christmas, my billionaire son asked if I was entitled to my $500 pension. He said it as if it were a tip I'd coaxed from a stranger, not money I'd earned standing on concrete floors, washing other people's dishes at night, and folding uniforms at the laundromat at dawn. I work 3 jobs to survive, buy food, and pay rent. He calls it a pension. Mom, he said, setting a crystal bottle of olive oil on the table as if it were a gift, are you sure you're entitled to this? You could be accused of fraud. Fraud. From his mouth. The boy who once cried over a broken kite now owns 4 houses he never sleeps in, and he stood by my Christmas tree at the thrift store, implying that I might be cheating someone. I watched him walk around my living room, assessing me like a buyer. His fingers brushed the mantelpiece where I keep the church program. I'm eligible, I said. I've put in the hours. He smiled without warmth. Of course. I just don't want any complications. You mentioned the union paycheck, the survivor's benefit from your dad's account, and this pension. Some of those programs compensate for overpayments. If there's an overpayment, they can refund it. Refund from where? The refrigerator? From the bus pass? How can my own son talk to me like I'm a file? The thought occurred to me before I could hide it. I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I poured coffee into the chipped mug he made me in 2nd grade and set it in front of him. He didn't touch it. And, he added flippantly, about the house. We should think about tax strategies. If you transfer ownership to a family trust, we can protect you from liability. I've brought simple paperwork. Take your time. Just sign where I've marked it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and let us know in the comments what time you're listening to this story. I've learned that men who talk about protection often mean control. 12 years ago, when my husband died, I took a night course at community college. Accounting basics. Consumer protection law. I recorded the conversation last week, word for word, his assistant asking for my social security number to expedite the vacation paperwork. I folded the marked papers and pushed them back across the desk. Leave them, I said. I'll take a look. He leaned toward me. The easiest way is to do it now. I said I'd take a look. His gaze cooled. He kissed my hair, left me a bottle of oil, and walked out whistling. Through the lace curtain, I watched him answer the phone in the car, laughing like a man who'd already won. He thinks I'm old and stupid, but my son would be wrong. I locked the door and carried the papers to the kitchen table. Outside, children were pulling each other on sleds made from trash can lids. The houses in our neighborhood were decorated with Christmas lights, as usual. I sat and reread the forms twice. There it was, on page 3, tucked under comforting words like revocable and transferable. A clause allowing the trustee, my son, to direct the sale for tax efficiency without my explicit consent in extraordinary circumstances. Emergency is a slippery word. I pulled my ledger out of the closet, the one with my shopping list in the front and my financial notes in the back. I'm the kind of woman who forgets where I put my glasses, but never what I hear. The small black recorder, hidden in a jar of tea leaves on the counter, glowed red. When my husband was dying, he asked for 2 favors. Don't give up the house while you're alive, and love our son. I can keep the first. The second is more difficult now. I called the number on the union card, the one with a woman's name and a thick accent I liked. She didn't answer because it was Christmas. I left a message. This is Maria. I think my son is trying to move my deed into a trust I do not want. I need to confirm my rights. Then I washed the mug he hadn't used, wiped the table, and went to my 2nd job. And people don't stop eating on holidays, and the diner pays extra if you don't mind scraping gravy off plates that once held other people's joy. By the time I got home, I had 3 messages, 2 from my son, 1 from the union woman. I listened to hers first. Maria, it's Sophia. I can't give legal advice, but I know someone at the elder law clinic at the college. Call me in the morning and watch your mail. If he's pushing fast, he'll push by mail. I slept lightly and dreamt of a door that wouldn't latch. In the morning, I woke with a stiff back and a calm mind. I did not call my son. I called Sophia and then the clinic. A young voice with tired edges answered, "Intake. How can we help?" I need to know what counts as exigent circumstances in a trust. She was quiet for a moment. Please hold. When she came back, she spoke differently. Careful. Is someone pressuring you to sign a document today? Not today. He tried yesterday. Do you have family support? Yes. The kind my mother taught me. Write everything down. Can you come in Tuesday? Bring the documents. Bring any notes. I work morning and night. I can come at noon. We'll make it noon. Ask for grace. I made a pot of soup and portioned it for the week. I run my life like a ship, little spills wiped, lines coiled, the deck ready. At 10, my son called again. I let it ring. He texted, Mom, I'm free at 2 to stop by with a notary. Let's make this easy. I put the phone face down. A minute later. Also about that pension. I have someone who can review it. There might be a problem. There might be a problem. Yes, there might. But not with my pension. At noon, I opened the drawer we used to call the junk drawer. It is not junk now. It has my stamps, my spare keys, and a string of bank envelopes labeled in pencil. In the back was something else, a folded piece of paper in my husband's hand. He wrote it after his first chemo, when his hair came out in the sink and his humor went with it. If I am not here to explain, he wrote, remember this. The foundation grants are his pride. Money moves there to be seen, not to be felt. If you ever need to know who he is, follow the invoices, not the speeches. I still had the file box from the funeral, the one with the foundation flyers and the letters of thanks printed on heavy paper. I put it on the table and read the names. A shelter, a scholarship, a park bench with a plaque. There was no reason for me to study them except that I suddenly wanted to see whether the words matched the deeds. My son thinks older women like me don't know how to use the internet. He forgets internet cafes existed before apps. And the library has computers with librarians who pretend not to notice tears. I spent an hour searching. The shelter had a remodeled kitchen. The newsletter showed smiling faces. The scholarship lists were longer each year. The park bench was real. There were photos of children with ice cream sitting on it. I felt my jaw loosen. Maybe, I thought, I have fought a ghost? Maybe his question about my pension came from some strange place of fear I cannot see. Then I found a set of vendor names repeated across many events for the foundation, a catering company I had never heard of, a logistics firm with a mailbox for an address, a PR outfit with a website that looked like it had been built by someone learning as they went. The foundation paid them 6 figures. I searched public records. The PR outfit's registered agent was my son's assistant's husband. The catering company's name was a riddle with the letters of my son's nickname in it, jumbled. The logistics firm shared an office suite with a venture fund he had bragged about at Thanksgiving. My heart beat slower. The bell was now a metronome. I made another note in my ledger. Vendors, possible self-dealing check invoices. Then I put the ledger away and went to work my afternoon shift at the laundry. The heat there is not kind, but it opens my lungs. I folded, counted, and watched people's lives appear and disappear in the steam. I thought of the girl at the clinic named Grace, a name that sounded like a promise even if she was a stranger. At 2, my phone buzzed again. We're 5 minutes out, my son texted. Bottom line, let's make the transfer while we still have a favorable property tax regime. Bottom line, regime. I replied, do not come. I am not home. He sent a thumbs up I could feel through the screen and wrote, tomorrow then. Early, I'll bring coffee. That evening, Sophia called. I spoke to Grace. She's ready. And Maria, remember, if he brings a notary, you have the right to say no. You don't have to let anyone in, I know, I said, but he's my son. I understand, she answered. Still, I slept with my coat over my feet like I used to when the heat failed, and I dreamed of numbers walking across a ledger like ants carrying crumbs. The day after Christmas, he came with coffee I did not drink and a notary I did not greet. I opened the door only as far as the chain and spoke through it. I have an appointment at noon. I'll bring the papers. You may pick them up from me there if the clinic says it is appropriate. His face changed in a small way, around the eyes. Mom, what clinic? What are you doing? We don't need... It opens at noon, I said. If I'm confused, they will tell me. I shut the door gently and watched the notary shift her weight in boots that cost more than my rent used to. My son stood on the step for a full minute, calculating. Then he smiled and raised his voice so the neighbor pruning his roses could hear. Of course, Mom! Whatever you need. He left like he always does, in a car that looks like it forgot the meaning of roads. I breathed out and put on my plain black coat with the hem stitched twice. Inside that hem, 3 inches from the side seam, rests a safety deposit key in a little cloth pocket. When I walk, it taps my thigh, a friend's knock. The clinic sat in an old brick building that once was a school. I sat in a row of plastic chairs with women who wore the days in their faces like pages. A man with a hat too small for his head kept his hands folded and stared at the floor tiles. I wondered if he had a son too. Grace was younger than the rest of me by decades and wiser than I had been at her age by miles. She shook my hand and looked me in the eyes, long enough for me to believe she would not look away when things became hard. She read the papers, she asked careful questions, she looked at my notes. Your instincts are good, she said. This language is ambitious. It would give him significant control. He can argue exigency for almost anything, especially if he frames it as liability protection. Can I simply refuse? I asked. You can, she said. But I'm less worried about what you sign than about what might be signed for you. Have you ever given him a general power of attorney? Even for a short period? No. Good. Has he ever had access to your accounts? No. He asks. I don't share that's good. She hesitated. If you're comfortable, we can draft a letter revoking any implied authority and stating clearly that you have capacity. I can also refer you to a pro bono lawyer who can help you create your own simple documents, things you control. If he is pushing this hard, it's not about taxes. It's about timing. What timing? She weighed her words. Year-end audits, board elections, family foundations pay taxes too if they get sloppy. Sometimes moving an asset at the right moment hides a mistake. At the last one, I thought about the vendor names. What if he is using the foundation to pay his friends? She looked at me more closely. Do you have evidence? Not yet, but I have a notebook and a key. I know where the old lockboxes are. My husband kept copies of everything. He didn't trust the cloud. He trusted metal. Grace leaned back, impressed but careful. If you discover wrongdoing, it is not on you to fix the city. Protect yourself first. Document. Don't confront alone. If you want, we can involve adult protective services quietly, not as a complaint, but as a preemptive note. It helps later. If anything turns, protect yourself first. I repeated. Yes. On the way home, I stopped at the bank where the tellers still say my name without looking at their screens. I signed in to visit the box my husband rented when stamps cost less. The vault smells clean and heavy, like a church after it's been closed. I turned the key, slid out the box, and sat in the little room that looks like confession without a priest. Inside were the things that mattered: our marriage certificate, a photo of us on a pier where the boards gave a little underfoot, a letter he wrote me when he thought he might not come back from a business trip because the winter roads were angry. There were also the financial things: statements, copies of filings, invoices clipped in batches, and a ledger in his quick engineer's hand that tracked the foundation's early years. I read. I stopped. I read again. The first years were clean, small donations to real places. Then, around the time my son sold his second company and headlines called him visionary, the vendors changed. The jumbled name catering outfit appeared. The logistics firm took over everything from chairs to security. The PR firm billed monthly for brand alignment. The amounts rose like bread with too much yeast. There were notes in the margins in my husband's hand. Hold until discuss. Ask Darren. Resolve late invoices. Why so many? My husband died that spring. In my ledger at home, I opened a new page. After Richard's death, I wrote, The foundation's payments to XYZ increase 300%. Board meets quarterly. Minutes show unanimous approval. Agents, assistant's husband, shared address with fund. I copied dates and amounts into neat columns and left space for more. My pencil broke. I sharpened it. I've never liked crooked lines. At dinner, I ate soup with crackers and thought about the word clawback. It does not scare me. I'm a woman who has had to claw forward every month of every winter. If the past wants to put its hands on me, it can try. The next morning, my son arrived with pastries and a smile for the neighbors. He walked in without asking because I left the door unlocked on purpose. It is easier to hold a conversation you invite than a struggle you resist. He put the box on the table and spread the trust papers like a dealer preparing a complicated game. "Mom," he said, "this is for your own good. You know, I love you." Love does not need witnesses, but he spoke as if he was delivering a monologue to a jury that lived in his head. I set my notebook beside the pastries. He tried to slide the notebook away with the edge of his hand as if it were a napkin. "I have an appointment Friday," I said, with a lawyer. "Pro bono. We will make documents I want." He laughed softly. "Those clinics are for people with different needs. Like me?" He hesitated one beat too long. "I want the best for you, Mom. I can pay for the best." "The best doesn't chuckle at my pension," I said. "The best remembers who paid for his first bicycle." His face tightened. "This is going nowhere. If you won't sign, I'll have to figure out another way to make sure you're safe." "What other way?" I asked. "Speak plainly." "I don't want to say something we can't unsay," he answered. But if you insist on refusing obvious help, I have to consider whether you are really capable of managing complex finances." I saw the road he was on. It was paved. It had signs every mile, all pointing to a word courts use when children want control of their parents for their parents' sake, or their own. I did not raise my voice. "Darren," I said, "look in my eyes." He did. In his irises, I saw a boy at a kitchen table tapping his pencil when he could not solve long division. In his chin, I saw his father's steadiness cut with impatience. "I am capable," I said, "and I am documenting. If you think I am not, you may ask a doctor, not a notary. Until then, leave my papers where they are." He gathered his things but left the pastries as if sugar could plaster the cracks. At the door, he said, almost as an afterthought, "By the way, I spoke to someone at the pension office. There's an overpayment. They might ask for it back." "How would they know to ask?" I said. He smiled. "You told me you keep such good records. Maybe you told them too. See you Friday." After he left, I called Grace. "He is pushing," I said. "He is hinting at competence." "We can preempt that," she replied. "We'll get a capacity evaluation by a neutral provider. We'll put it in the file. We'll draft a statement, no authority, no consent to transfers, no change in domicile or care. We'll send it certified to him and to your bank. And Maria, if he or anyone else threatens to show up with law enforcement for a welfare check, call me first. You can have a witness on the phone. The neighbor with the roses, his name is Mr. Patel, stopped by that afternoon with a plate of sweets his wife had made. "I saw your son," he said kindly. "He is a busy man." "He is," I agreed. "Could I ask you something? If there were ever a moment here, would you stand on your porch and simply watch? Sometimes seeing is a kindness." He nodded as if I had asked for sugar. "We will watch." That night, I pulled out my husband's file again. There was one more thing I had not paid attention to because it looked like junk. A thumb drive with a label in his small, careful letters. Backup, Fendi TNQ 1 to Q4. I do not trust thumb drives the way young people do, but I plugged it into the old laptop anyway. It opened a neat set of folders with names like invoices, board minutes, and correspondence. The last had emails printed to PDF because my husband did not like relying on clouds or servers that could pretend to forget. I read the emails. A pattern emerged that made my chest cold. My husband asking questions, delays in replies, my son jumping in to handle things, then vendors submitting revised invoices that matched the revised story. The amounts were not enormous to the world. They were enormous to me. They were enough to buy a small piece I did not have. One email made my hands shake. It was from my son to a man with a name I recognized from magazine profiles. Need to move 300,000 through outreach line this quarter. Can your shop invoice for consulting? Will clear by Friday. The reply? Of course. Send description. I took screenshots. I printed. I slipped pages into plastic sleeves because paper wears out under grief. The second hook arrived on a day that smelled like snow. A woman came to the diner where I washed dishes and waited at the counter longer than made sense. She finally asked for me by name. You're Maria? I hear you were married to Richard Alvarez? Yes, I said carefully. She slipped a card across the counter. It was plain. It had a seal. If you have 10 minutes, she said, I can wait. We sat in the manager's office between sacks of flour and a calendar with farm animals on it. I'm not here to scare you, she said first. I'm here to tell you we've been looking at some of the same things you have. How do you know what I'm looking at? I asked. Your son's assistant made a mistake, she said. She thought public records are invisible because they are boring. They are not. And someone filed a complaint a month ago. It had your husband's thumb drive attached. Who filed? A person who did not leave a name. But the metadata said Maria Kitchen. I felt the floor tilt. I didn't send anything. She smiled without malice. Then someone used your files as proof. I'm not asking you to testify. I'm asking you to keep your door locked and your phone on. Who are you? I asked. Someone who watches money for a living, she said. If your son asks again whether you're entitled to your pension, ask him whether he is entitled to the city's thanks. I walked back to the sink and finished my shift with my heart beating on both sides of my ribcage. That night, I checked the freezer and found the cake I'd made for New Year's wrapped in foil. I took it out and set it to thaw. I would need something sweet before I did what came next. The next morning, I called my son. Come by, but then, Iando sauce on it said, Salt Einstein will sign. He was so happy he forgot to pretend not to be. Great, he said, I'll bring the notary. You won't need the notary, I said. It's just us. He came in with that light step men have when their shoes cost as much as a mortgage. He had the papers. I had the ledger and the thumb drive and the recorder running, not hidden now, but resting in the middle of the table like a third cup. I thought you didn't like games, he said, eyes flicking to the recorder. I like rules, I said. Let's use them. He sat. I spoke first because I am old enough to know momentum belongs to the first voice. Before I sign anything, I want to understand your need. Why is this urgent? Why does it matter whether I have a pension of $500? That was just an example, he said. We need to make sure if there's an overpayment, it doesn't complicate things. What things? Estate planning. Whose estate? He inhaled slowly. Mom. I slid the ledger to him. You asked me if I was entitled to my pension. I am. But you? Are you entitled to invoice yourself through a foundation named after your father? Are you entitled to ask your assistant's husband to bill for brand alignment while you sit on the board that approves the invoice? Color rose in his neck like a rash. You don't know what you're talking about. You're right, I said. I don't understand the science of what you do. But here are numbers. Here are names. Here is a drive with your father's emails. Here is an email where you ask someone to move money through the outreach line. He swallowed. His eyes went to the door and back. You have no context for that. That's why I invited you, I said calmly. Give me context. And while you do, I'm going to press this little button. It will help me remember. He stood. For a second, I saw the boy who hid when he broke a dish. Then I saw the man who learned how to hire people to say, the dish has always been broken. You don't get it, he said, quieter now. Everyone does this. It's how business works. You think those vendors aren't doing real work? You think that bench in the park engraved itself? The bench is real, I said. So is the invoice that paid for a party in a house with your initials in the gate. The party had small sandwiches caged under silver domes. It did not look like outreach. He rubbed his forehead with the heel of his hand. If you go to the board with this, they'll close ranks. You'll embarrass yourself. And me? Me, I can stand to embarrass, I said. You less. He sat again and put his hands flat on the table as if it were a steering wheel. What do you want? It is a strange thing to be asked what you want by your child, as if you are negotiating in a market. Mothers are taught to want the child's safety and nothing else. But I had lived long enough to name other wants. I want my house in my name, I said. I want written respect. No one speaks of my capacity without me in the room. I want your assurance that you will not touch my accounts or send anyone near them, including people who say they are checking for overpayments. I want you to resign from the foundation board and ask for an independent audit. You're out of your mind, he said, and then looked at the recorder and changed it to, that is extreme. I want you to call the woman who came to the diner and tell her whatever she asks about the vendors. I want you to tell the assistant's husband to return what his firm was paid for alignment. I want the year to start clean. He laughed then. It surprised me. There was a wildness in it. You showed your cards, he said. Now I know exactly how afraid you are. You have nothing but papers and a recorder and your word. I have judges who donate to my campaigns. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a fact, he said. Mom, you want to play detective at your age? Fine. But there are ways to make this simple. You sign, you move somewhere comfortable, I roll these invoices into a legitimate consulting firm and pay back what needs paying. Everyone smiles. Otherwise, the next visit we have is with a doctor who evaluates your ability to live alone. Do you understand me? There were lines you cannot uncross, and he had stepped over one with clean shoes. I could feel my husband's letter in my pocket like a warmth. I put my hand on the recorder not to turn it off, but to feel the small weight steady me. How could my own son do this to me? I asked aloud, for once. Not rhetorical. A question that landed between us like a plate no one wanted to touch. He looked away first. You decided a long time ago that I was still the boy with the broken kite. No, I said quietly. I decided that the value of a thing is not how much you can extract from it by smiling. I stood. In that small shift, I became the person I had been when I told a landlord he couldn't keep my deposit because I had a copy of the move-in sheet with his signature. I became the woman who refused to let the hospital discharge my husband with no home oxygen because the numbers on the monitor told a truth the nurse didn't want to face. I became, again, the daughter of a seamstress who hid our rent in the hem of a curtain when men came knocking. This conversation is over, I said, Yin. You may leave. If you do not, Mr. Patel will stand on his porch and watch, and I will call Grace. He stepped back like I had struck him, not because I had, but because he could tell I would not flinch if I needed to. He took his papers. He took his coffee cup. He did not take the pastries. When he was gone, I closed the shade and cried a clean cry. Not dramatic. A wash. Then I called Grace and told her everything. She went still in the way of people who listen for a living. We will file the letters today, she said. And Maria? If he tries the doctor route, it will not go the way he thinks. Documentation matters. Documentation, the small, slow shield. It did not end there. Men like my son do not yield to letters. He sent 2 people over the following week, one who said she was a wellness consultant and looked around my kitchen with a clipboard, and one who said he was a visiting pastor and asked if I had anyone to pray with. I told the first to leave, and she did after I called Sophia and put her on speaker. I told the pastor that God heard me fine without witnesses, and he left a pamphlet on the step that advertised a senior relocation service on the back. At the diner, a man I didn't know sat at the counter and watched me race dishes through the machine. After an hour, he paid for a cup of coffee he never sipped and slipped an envelope into the tip jar. It was blank. It contained a copy of a filed complaint naming the vendors and alleging fraud. It did not name me. The complainant was anonymous, but the words had a cadence like mine. Whoever wrote it had been taught to number paragraphs and use the word respectfully. In January, the audit began. My son resigned from the board to spend more time with family, which would have been funny if anything about this felt like humor. The assistant's husband posted a vague message online about misunderstandings. The logistics firm scrubbed their website. My son sent me a text with no greeting. "Are you happy now?" I did not reply. What I did instead was go to the foundation's public meeting. They moved it to a larger room because the audit had woken people's curiosity, and curiosity is a muscle that, once stretched, does not want to contract. I sat in the second row wearing the blue coat my husband liked because it made my hair look soft. My son walked in through a side door and saw me. He did not slow. He sat on the end of a row across the aisle, where he could leave quickly if he needed to. The chair of the board cleared her throat and read a prepared statement about best practices and continuous improvement. Then something happened I had not predicted. The shelter director stood and spoke about how their kitchen had been remodeled, but the invoices often confused her, and she had been told not to worry, that alignment covered it. The scholarship coordinator said a consultant had suggested reducing grants to build brand presence, which felt like losing the point. A man from the Park Service said quietly that the bench plaque was installed by volunteers and the only invoice they'd seen was for community engagement catering, which was odd because the children brought their own ice cream. My son did not leave the room. He sat very still. A woman with silver braids raised her hand and asked, "Who approved these vendors?" The chair said, "The board," unanimously. Another hand, "Who recommended them?" A board member I recognized as my son's friend said, "Our executive director." The executive director, pale and tight in the mouth, said recommendations came from finance. And finance elsewhere was my son. I did not speak. I held the recorder in my coat pocket with the red light off. I did not need it. The air itself recorded. When it was over, my son stood and approached me. "Let me drive you home," he said. His voice held a plea I had not heard since he was little and sugar low. "I'm fine," I said. "Please," he said softer. "For once, let me be the one who takes you home." We drove in silence. The sky had that strange winter brightness that makes everything look like it is lit from below. And in front of my house, he turned off the engine and put his head on the steering wheel like a man in a photograph of regret. "Why didn't you stop me earlier, Sa?" he asked. "You knew." "I didn't know," I said. "I suspected. And when you asked me about my pension, I understood the size of your contempt." He flinched as if the word were a pebble thrown from close range. "I didn't mean to insult you." "You meant to establish a narrative," I said. "Me small, you big, me confused, you saving me. That narrative is over." He pressed his forehead to the leather again. "They'll claw it back," he whispered. "Everything." "Then let it be clawed," I said. "Better now than later." He lifted his head. "What do you want from me now?" "You got your audit. You got your show I thought of asking for the impossible, which is the return of the boy with the broken kite. Instead, I asked for something hard but possible. I want you to apologize to me, not for the money, for the day you told me double dipping, for turning my life into a cautionary tale in your head." He opened his mouth and closed it. For a long 3 breaths, we simply listened to the world honk and hush around us. Then he said, "I'm sorry," and it was either the truth or something as close as he could get. I nodded. "And I want you to work at the shelter. Not as a donor, as a man who scrubs the pans and takes out the trash without telling anyone his title. Do it for 6 months. Learn what money feels like when it isn't numbers." He stared at me as if I had told him to walk around the world barefoot. "You're serious?" "Very." "You're trying to humiliate me." "I am trying to introduce you to the kitchen. The world works from there." He did not answer. He looked away at my little stoop, at the plant pot full of dirt where basil grew in summer. "I'll think about it," he said, which meant he liked the idea of liking it. Men like my son build bridges to virtue they do not cross, but sometimes they surprise you. In the weeks that followed, the city did not implode. It bent and creaked. The audit found what we had seen and more. The foundation issued statements. Some donors pulled back, others doubled down because the work was real and they wanted it saved. The vendors returned money in lumps. The assistant's husband declared bankruptcy and then found work doing something that may have suited him better. The logistics firm changed its name. and pretended to be new. The PR outfit stopped billing the foundation and started billing my son's company, which meant nothing or everything, depending on how you read the wind. As for my son, he sent me a photo one Saturday morning. It was of a sink filled with suds, his hands in rubber gloves. "You win," the text said. I did not reply. It is not a game. But I kept the photo in my ledger, tucked next to the entry where I had written months before. "He thinks I am small because my pension is small." I kept working. The diner needed me. The laundry needed me. My bones liked the movement. On my birthday, the church ladies brought me flowers and a cake with too many candles crowded together, which is the opposite of how we count years, but exactly how we count love. One evening in spring, I sat on the bench under the maple that my husband planted with our son when he was little and soft. The light made the leaves thin and glowing, and a car pulled up to the curb and my son climbed out, walking more slowly than his shoes suggested. He sat on the step. "I went to the shelter," he said, not boasting and not confessing. "The first week, I hated it. The second week, less. Last night, a woman came in with 2 kids and thanked me for the stew. I didn't make it, but I ladled it. It felt like something good," I said. I did not clap or cry. I let the good sit like a plate on the table. He looked at my hands. They are the map of my life now, spots and lines and the little scars from grease pops and needle pricks. "I'm sorry about the house," he said. "I wasn't thinking about you." I was thinking about numbers. "Numbers help us count," I said. "They do not help us love." He nodded, as if that were a thing one could write down for later. "Are we okay?" "We? Okay." The words children use when they need their parent to draw a circle around them again. "We are in the same room," I said. "That is a start." He stood. "Do you want anything from the store?" "Yes," I said, surprising us both. "Get me 1 jar of jam, the expensive kind, the kind you buy for people you respect." He smiled without showing teeth. "All right." He started toward the car and then turned back. "Oh, and Mom, the pension." I spoke to the office. "It's correct. You are entitled." "I know," I said. He left. The maple flickered. A bird ordered its own world in the branches. I took the ledger from my lap and added a last entry to that long chapter. Entitled, not a dirty word. That summer, the foundation hosted a community day at the park. No plaques, no speeches. The children sat on the bench with ice cream again, and no one invoiced the air for being warm. My son stood by the grill, flipping hot dogs in a paper apron, and a boy with a missing front tooth told him he was doing it wrong. He laughed and did it the boy's way. When I walked home, neighbors waved the way they do on a street that shares its worries and its spare eggs. Mr. Patel's wife handed me tomatoes from her garden and said, "You look lighter." "I put something down," I said. On my table, the jam jar stood like a jewel. I opened it, spread out a spoonful on toast, and ate it slowly. The taste was tart and deep, not sweet enough to lie and not sour enough to wound. It tasted like the middle of life. I still work my jobs. I still keep the ledger. I still tap the hem of my coat and feel the key. And yes, I still take my pension each month like an honest sunrise. Sometimes I think about the question that started everything. Are you sure you're entitled? I have learned, in the plainest way, that entitlement can be a theft or a right depending on who says it and why. I am entitled to the money I earned standing on those floors and cleaning those plates. I am entitled to my house until my hands no longer wish to hold its doors. I am entitled to respect, and I am entitled to a son who, if he cannot always be the boy with the broken kite, can at least be a man who knows a knot when he sees one. When the year turned again, I made a small ceremony for myself. I sat with the ledger and a cup of tea, and the recorder turned off for once. I wrote one sentence on a fresh page: justice is not loud. It is steady, like a woman's hand pressing a hem flat before the last careful stitch. I closed the book and placed it back in the pantry, between the flour and the canned tomatoes, where ordinary things keep extraordinary company. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the bench under the maple. The light had changed, But the wood held the memory of many summers. Somewhere in the city, invoices were being written that would match the work they described. Somewhere in a kitchen, my son rinsed a pan and did not ask anyone to count his goodness by the hour. It isn't a fairy tale. It is better, it is real, and it is enough. Do you think I did the right thing? Let me know in the comments. If you liked my story, subscribe to the channel and like it. Thank you for listening to this story.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.